Generally speaking, no one can really see the future. But if you're one of those people who happen to know what needs to happen, you can give things a little nudge. Once and Future by Pratchett. Read by Karl. When Matins was done, the congregation filed out to the yard. They were confronted by a marble block in which had been thrust a beautiful sword. The block was 4 feet square, and the sword passed through a steel anvil which had been stuck in the stone and which protected a fruit from it. The anvil had been inscribed with letters of gold. Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anviled is right king born of all Britain. From Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. The copper wire. It was the copper wire that gave it the trouble. It was all down to copper wire. The old alchemists used to search for gold. If they know what a man and a girl could do with copper wire, and a tide mill, and a couple of hefty bars of soft iron. Here I am now with this ridiculous staff in one hand and a switch under my foot, waiting. Wish they didn't call me Merlin. It's Mervyn. There was a Merlin, I found out. A mad-old guy who lived in Wales and died years ago. But there were legends about him. I know that what is on to me now. I reckon it happens all the time. Half the famous heroes of history are really just lots of local guys all rolled into one by the ballad singers. Remember Robin Hood? Technically, I suppose I can't, because none of the rascals who went under that name would have been born for several centuries yet. If he's even due to exist in this universe. So using the word remember is probably the wrong, grammar. You remember something that hasn't happened yet? I can. Nearly everything I can remember hasn't happened yet. But that's how it goes in the time travel business. Gone today and here tomorrow. Oh, here comes another one of them. Strapping lad. Legs like 4 beer kegs strapped in pairs, shoulders like an ox. Bragging like an ox too, I shouldn't wonder. Hand like a bunch of bananas, gripping the sword. Oh no, my lad, you're not the one. Grit your teeth all you like. You're not the one. There we go. His arm will be aching for days. I suppose I better tell you about this place. About this time. Whatever it is. I suppose you're training for time travel. The big problem is finding out when you are. Basically, when you step out of a time machine, you can't rely on, say, a little sign that says, "Welcome to AD 500, gateway to the Dark Ages, population 10 million and falling." Sometimes you can't even rely on finding anyone in the Deus March who knows what year it is, or what king is on the throne, or what a king is. So you learn to look at things like church architecture, the way the fields are formed, the shape of the plowshares, that sort of thing. Yeah, I know, you've seen films where this dinky little alphanumeric display that tells you exactly where you are. Forget it. It's all dead reckoning in this game. Real primitive stuff. You start out by checking the constellations with a little gadget. You tell me the stars are moving around all the time, you get a rough idea of where you are, just looking through the thing and reading off along the calibrations. If you can't even recognize the constellations, the best thing to do is run and hide. Because something 40 feet tall and covered with scales is probably hunting you already. Plus, they give you a guide to various burnt-out supernovas and stuff where craters of the moon by estimated creation date. Whether you luck, you can pinpoint yourself 50 years either way. It's just a matter of checking planetary positions for the fine-tuning. Try to imagine sea navigation around the time of old Columbus. A bit hit or miss, yeah? Well, time navigation is just about the same level. Everyone said I must be one great wizard to spend so much time studying the sky. That's because I was trying to find out when I was. The sky tells me I'm around about AD 500. So why is the architecture Norman and the armor 15th century? Hold on, here comes another one. Well, it's not your actual Einstein, but it could be. No, look at that grip, look at that rage. No, it's not the one, not him. Sorry about that. So, right, where was I? Remember, I can save these days. Yeah, the architecture. Everyone's speaking sort of Middle English, which is okay as it turned out, because I could get by in that, having accidentally graduated in 1479 once. That's where I met John Gutenberg, father of modern printing. Tall man, bushy whiskers. Still owes me tuppence. Anyway, back to this trip. I always found to start that things weren't quite right. This time it's supposed to be sending me to observe the crowning of Charlemagne in AD 800. Here I was in the wrong country, and according to the sky, about 3 centuries too soon. This kind of thing happens. Like I said, it's going to be at least 50 years before we get it right. 53 years, actually, because I met this man in the bar in 1875, who's from 100 years in the future, and he told me. I told him that basically we might as well save a lot of effort by just, bribing one of the future guys for the plans on the next model. They said if we evaluated laws of cause and effect like that, there's a good chance the whole universe would suddenly catastrophically collapse in its tiny bubble, 0.005 angstroms across. But I'd say it's got to be worth a try. Anyway, the copper wire gave me a lot of trouble. That's not to say I'm incompetent. Just an average guy I ever respect, except I'm the one in 10,000 who could time travel and stung up with all his marbles. This gives me a slight headache. And I'm good at languages, and a very good observer. You better believe I've observed some strange things. The Charlemagne coronation was going to be a vacation. It was my second visit, paid for by a bunch of historians in some university somewhere. Couldn't take a few things the guys who commissioned the first trip had raised after reading my report. Had it all worked out where it's going to stand so I couldn't see myself. I could probably talk my way out of it even if I had met myself with that. One thing you learn in this trade is the gift of gab. I know the diode blew or a 1 turned out to be a 0, and here I am, whatever this is. And I can't get back. Anyway, what was I saying? Instantly, the other problem with the copper wire is getting the insulation. In the end, I wrapped it up in fine cloth and painted every layer with some sort of varnish to use on shields, which seemed to have done the trick. And, I think time traveling affects the memory. Like your memory subconsciously knows the things you remember haven't happened yet, and this upsets you in some way. There's whole bits of history I can't remember. I wish I knew what they were. Excuse me a moment, here's another one. An oldest guy. Quite right by the look of him. I bet he can practically write his own name. I don't know, he hasn't got the... Wish I knew what it was he hasn't got. Charisma! I knew it was there somewhere. So anyway, yeah, here I was, 3 centuries adrift and nothing working. Ever seen a time machine? Probably not. The bit you move around in is very, very hard to see unless the light catches it just right. The actual works are back at base, and at the same time in the machine, so you're traveling something like a mechanical ghost. Something that's what's left of the machine when you take all the parts away. An idea of a machine. Think of it as a big crystal. So it looked like to you, I said, if the light was right. Woke up in what I suppose I've got to call a bed. Just straw and heather with a blanket made of itches woven together. There was this girl trying to feed me soup. You don't really try to imagine medieval soup. It's made of all the stuff they wouldn't eat even if it was on a plate, and believe me, they'd eat stuff you'd hate to put on a hamburger. I've been there, I found out later, for 3 days. I didn't even know I'd arrived. I've been wandering around the woods, half conscious and dribbling. Side effect of the traveling. Like I said, normally I'd just get a migraine. If I remember of it, it was like jet lag times 1 million. If it had been winter, I'd have been dead. If there had been cliffs, I would have thrown myself over one. As it was, I just dropped into a few trees, and that was by accident. At least I'd avoided the wolves and bears. Or maybe they'd avoided me. Maybe they think you die if you eat a crazy person. Her father was a woodcutter, or charcoal burner, or one of those things. Never did fan out. Maybe I did, and I've forgotten. Used to go out every day with an axe, I remember that. He found me and brought me home. When afterwards he thought I was a nobleman, because of my fine clothes. I was wearing Levi's, that should give you some idea. He had 2 sons, and they went out every day with axes too. Never really managed to strike up a conversation with either of them until after the father's accident. Didn't know enough about axes, I suppose. But anyway, what a girl. She was only, How old were you when we met? She wiped her hands on a bit of rag. We'd had to grease the brains with pig fat. 15, she says, I think. Listen, there's another hour of water above the mill, but I don't think the generator will last that long. It's shaking right merrily. She looks speculatively at the nobles. What a bunch of By Our Lady Jacks, she says. Jocks. Yes, jocks. I shrug. One of them will be your king, I tell her. Not my king, Mervyn. I will never have a king, she says, and grins. But which you can tell she's learned a lot in 12 months. Yes, I broke the rules and told the truth. Why not? Broken all the rules to save this damn country. Just like the universe is turning into this tiny ball .005 angstroms across. First, I don't think this is our timeline. It's all wrong, like I said. I think it was knocked sideways into some sort of other history. Maybe history will never exist in people's heads because time travel is a fantasy anyway. You hear mathematicians talking about imaginary numbers which are real. I reckon this is an imaginary place made of real things. Or something. How should I know? Perhaps enough people believing something makes it real. I'd ended up in Albion, though I didn't find out until later. Not Britain, not England. A place very much like them. A place that shares a lot of things with them. A place so close to them that maybe ideas and stories link across. But a place that is its own place. It was something that went wrong somewhere. There was someone missing. There should have been a great king. You can fill in his name. He's out there somewhere in the crowd. Lucky for him I turned up. You want me to describe this world? You want to hear about the jousts, the pennants, the castles? Right, it's got all that. But everything else has this, like, thin film of mud over it. The difference between the average peasant's hut and a pigsty is a good farmer will sometimes change to straw in a pigsty. Now get me right, no one's doing any repressing as far as I can see. There's no slavery as such, except to tradition, but tradition wields a heavy lash. I mean, maybe democracy isn't perfect. At least we don't let ourselves be outvoted by the dead. Since there's no strong man in charge, there's a little would-be king in every valley. It's most of his time fighting other would-be kings, and the whole world is a state of half-hearted war. Everyone goes through life proudly doing things clumsily just because their forefathers did them that way. No one really enjoys anything, and good fields are filling with weeds. I told him away I came from another country, which was true enough. I talked to her a lot because she was the only one with any sense around the place. She was small and skinny and alert, and the same way that a bird is alert. Sorry I broke the rules to save this country, but if I'm honest, I'd have to say I did it all for her. She was the one bright thing in a world of mud. She's nice to have around, she learns quickly, and, well, I've seen what the women here look like by the time of the 30. That shouldn't happen to anyone. She talked to us and told me while she did the housework. Is that's what you can call moving the dirt around until it got lost. Told her about the future. Why not? What harm could it do? But she wasn't very impressed. And I guess she didn't know enough to be impressed. Man and the moon were all one with the fairies and the saints. But piped water got her interest. Because every day she had to go to a spring with a couple of wooden buckets and a yoke thing around her neck. Every cottage has this, she said, eyeing me carefully over the top of the broom. Sure. Not just the rich? The rich have more bathrooms, I said. Then I had to explain about bathrooms. You people could do it, I told her. Just need to dam a spring up in the hills and find a blacksmith or someone to make some copper pipes. Or lead iron at a pinch. She looked wistful. My father wouldn't allow that, she said. Surely he sees the benefits of having water laid on, I suggested. She shrugged. Why should he? She doesn't carry it from the spring. Oh. But she did follow me around at what time there was between short tours. It's like I've always said, women always had a greater stake in technology than men. We'd still be living in trees otherwise. Piped water, electric lighting, stove you don't need to shove wood into. I remember that behind half the great inventors of history were their wives, nagging them into finding a cleaner way of doing the chores. Nimue trailed me like a spaniel as I tarred around the village. If you use the term for a collection of huts that looked like something deposited in the last ice age, or possibly by a dinosaur with a really serious bowel problem. She took me into the forest, where I finally found the machine in a thorn thicket, totally unrepairable. The hope was that someone might fetch me if they ever worked out where I was. And I knew they never would, because if they did, they'd have been here already. Even if it took them 10 years to work it out, they'd still come back to the here and now. That's the thing about time travel. You got all the time in the world. I was marooned. However, we experienced travelers always carry a little something to tide us over the bad times. I got a whole box of stuff under the seat. A few small gold ingots. Sunsbelt everywhere, like the very best credit cards. Pepper, worth more than gold for hundreds of years. Aluminum, a rare and precious metal in the days before cheap and plentiful electricity. And seeds. and pencils. Enough drugs to start a store. Don't tell me about herbal remedies. People screamed down the centuries, trying to stop things like dental abscesses when little green junk that happened to be growing in the mud. She watched me owlishly while I sorted through the stuff and told her what it all did. Next day, her father cut his leg open with his axe. The brothers carried him home. I stitched him up with her eyes on me, treated the wound. A week later, he was walking around again, instead of being a cripple, at best, or more likely a gangrenous corpse, and I was a hero. Or rather, since I didn't have the muscles for a hero, obviously a wizard. I was mad to act like that. You're not supposed to meddle. What the hell? I was marooned. I was never going home. I didn't care. And I could cure, which is almost as powerful as being able to kill. I taught hygiene, taught them about turnips and running water and basic medicine. The boss of the valley was a decent enough old knight called Sir Ector. Nimue knew him, which surprised me, but shouldn't have. The old boy was only a step up from his peasants, seemed to know them all, and wasn't much richer than they were, except history had left him with a crumbling castle and a suit of rusty armor. Nimue went up to the castle one day a week to be kind of lady's maid for his daughter. After I pulled all the bad teeth into making his life agony, old Ector swore a turn of friendship and gave me the run of the place. I made his son Kay, big hardy lad with the muscles of an ox and possibly the brains of one. There was this doctor to whom no one seemed to want to introduce me properly, perhaps because he was very attractive in a quiet kind of way. She didn't want those stairs to see him reading inside of your skull. She and Nimue got along like sisters. Like sisters that get along well, I mean. I became a big man in the neighborhood. It's amazing the impression you can make with a handful of messages, some basic science, and a good line and bowl. Pearl and Merlin had left a hole which I filled like water in a cup. Wasn't a man in the country who wouldn't listen to me. Whenever she had a spare moment, Nimue followed me, watching like an owl. Plus, at that time, I had some sort of dream, like the Connecticut Yankee, of single-handedly driving the society into the 20th century. You might as well try pushing the sea with a broom. But they do what you tell them, Nimue said. She was helping me in the lab at the time, I think. I call it the lab. It was just a room of the castle. I was trying to make penicillin. That's exactly it, I told her. What good is that? And when I turned my back to go back to the same old ways. I thought you told me a democracy was where people did what they wanted to do, she said. It's a democracy, I said. It's fine for people to do what they want to do, provided they do what's right. She bit her lip thoughtfully. That does not sound sensible. That's how it works. When we have a democracy, every man says who shall be king? Something like that, yes. And what do the women do? I had to think about that. Well, they should have the vote too, I said. Eventually, it'll take some time. Don't think Albion is ready for female suffrage. It has female suffrage already, she said with unusual bitterness. Suffrage. It means the right to vote. I patted her hand. Anyway, I told her, you can't start with democracy. You have to work up through stuff like tyranny and monarchy first. They let people serve relief when they get to democracy to hang on to it. People used to do what the old king told them, she said, carefully measuring bread and milk into the shallow bowls. The High King, I mean. Everyone did what the High King said, even the lesser kings. Heard about this High King. His time, apparently, the land was flowed with so much milk and honey people must have needed waiters to get around. I don't go for that kind of thing. I'm a practical man. People talk about the great past, usually trying to excuse the mediocre present. Such a person might get things done, I said. And they die, and history shows, or will show, but I couldn't exactly put it like that to her. Things go back to being even worse when they die. Take it from me. Is that one of those things that you call a figure of speech, Mervyn? Sure. That was a child, they say. He didn't stand by the king until he was old enough to protect itself from wicked uncles and so on. I don't know about uncles. Heard men say that many kings hated the power of Uther Pendragon. She stacked the dishes on the windowsill. I hadn't got much idea about penicillin risk, and I was just letting stuff go moldy and hoping. Why are you looking at me like that? She said. Uther Pendragon? From Cornwall? You knew him? Yeah, heard of him. He had a castle called Tintagel. He was the father of. She's staring at me. I tried again. He was the king here? Yes. I didn't know what to say to her. Wandered over the window and looked out. There's nothing much out there but forest. Not queer forest like you find Tolkien's elves in, but deep, damp forest, all mosses and plunk wood. It was creeping back. Too many little wars, too many people dying, not enough people to plow the fields. And out there someone was the true king, waiting for his chance, waiting for me? The king. Not any old king, the king. Arthur. Archus the bear. Once and future. Round table. Age of chivalry. He never existed. Except here. Maybe. Maybe here, in a world you get to in a broken time machine, well, it's not exactly a memory and not exactly a story. And I was the only one who knew how the legend went. Me, Mervyn. With his leadership and my experience, what a team. Looked at her face. Clear as a pond now, but a little worried. She was thinking that old Mervyn was going to be ill again. I remember I drummed my fingers on the cold windowsill. No, there's such heating in the castle. Winter was coming. It's going to be a bad one in this ruined country. Then I said, "Oh," she looked startled. "Just practicing," I said, and tried again. "Oh, hear me, hear me." Not bad. "Hear me, O ye men of Albion, hear me. It is I, Mervyn," that's with a V, "who speaks to you. Let the message go out that the sign has been sent to end the wars and choose the right wise king of Albion. Ooh." She was near to panic by this time. A couple of servants were peering around the door. I sent them away. "How was it?" I said. "Impressive, eh? Could probably work, yeah?" "What is the sign?" she whispered. "Traditionally, a sword and a stone," I said. "It was only the rifle air could pull out. But how can that be?" "Not sure. I'll just think of a way." That was months away. The other way was some sort of bolt mechanism or something. No, of course I didn't think it was a mystic king out there. I kept telling myself that. There was a good chance that there was a lad who looked good on a horse, and bright enough to take advice from any wizardly type who happened to be around. Like I said, I'm a practical man. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, all the mechanical stuff of doing it, I had to rule it out. That left electricity. The funny thing is, a lot easier to make a crude electrical generator than a crude steam engine. The only really critical things are the bearings and the copper wire. It was Nimue who eventually sorted that one out. "See, lady's running fine jewelry with gold and silver wires in it," she said. "The maid who made them must know how to do it with copper." And of course she was right. I just wasn't thinking straight. They just pulled stiff metal through tough steel plates with little holes in them, gradually boiling into smaller and smaller thickness. Went to London and found a couple who could do it. Got a blacksmith to make a sort of draw plates because they didn't want wire and jewelry quantities, but in industrial amounts. It already got quite a reputation then, and no one asked me what I needed it for. I could have said, "Well, half of it would be for the generator, and the rest would be for the electromagnets and the stone," and what would they have known? Had their smith make me up some soft iron cores on the bearings, and Nimue and I spent hours winding the wire and shellacking every layer. Getting the motor power was simple. The country was thick with mills. I chose a side mill because it's dependable. This one was on an impressive stretch of coast. Though the legend said it was done in London or Winchester or somewhere, but I had to go where the power was. And anyway, it looked good. There on the shore with the surf pounding on the rocks and everything. The stone was the easy bit. There's been a crude concrete technology ever since the Romans. Though I made it to myself, I made quite a less looking stone around the electromagnets. We got it finished before the day I set for the big contest. We put a big canvas chute around it. There was no thing the locals would have come near it for a fortune. Nimue operated the switch while I slid the sword in and out. "That means you're king?" she said, grinning. "Not me. I haven't got what it takes to rule." "Why? What does it take?" "We'll know when we see it. We're looking for a boy with the air of authority. The kind of land of war worried people will follow. And you're sure to find him? If I don't, the universe isn't being run properly." She got this funny way of grinning. Not exactly mocking, but it's always made me feel uneasy. "Now listen to you. You better. I'm the wizard around here. As not a man in the country I can't outthink my girl. Wishes of us covering as you, Mervyn, she said, and grinned again. Silly little thing. And now back to the present. Time travel. Your mind wanders. Back to this rocky shore, on the stone, on the sword. Hold it, hold it. I think. Yes, this looks like the one. A slight one, lad. Not swaggering at all, but strolling off the stone as if he's certain of his fortune. Racket closes, but that's not a problem. We can do something about those later. People are moving aside. It's uncanny. You can see destiny unfolding like a deck cheater. Can't see much other than the hood. One of those big, floppy ones the peasants wear. He's looking directly at me. What if he suspects? What if he's real? What if he's been hiding all these years? But never mind that now. Got to seize the moment. Shift my way slightly so my foot comes off the buried switch, cutting the currents into the rock. Good lord, it's not even making an effort. Now comes the sword, sweet as you like. Everyone's cheering, and he's waving the thing in the air, and the sun coming out, catching in a way that even I could in a rage. Ting! And it's done. They'll have to stop squabbling now. They've got to the king, and no one can argue with it, because they all seen the miracle. Bright new future, etc., etc. Of course, he'll need some good advice from someone just like me. Throws back his hood, and she lets her blonde hair fall out, and the crowd goes ice quiet. We're not talking damsels here. She's smelling like a tiger. Looks as though she could do considerable damage with that sword. I think the word I'm looking for is imperious. She's daring them to protest, and they can't. They've seen the miracle. She doesn't like the kind of person who needs advice. She looks far too intelligent for my liking. She just looks like a first-soured Hector with that bright stare that sees right into a man's soul. God help the little kings who don't come to heel right now. I got to Nimue. She's smiling an instant little smile to herself. Can't remember. She said child, I can remember that. But she did ever actually say son? I thought I was controlling myths. Maybe I was just one of the players. I bent down in Nimue's ear. Just have interest, I say. What is her name? Didn't catch it the first time. Ursula, she says, just smiling. Ah, from the Latin for bear, I might have guessed. Oh well, nothing for it. But I better see if I can find enough decent seasoned hammer for a round table. The left of me, I can't guess who's going to sit around it. Not just a lot of thick-headed knights in tin trousers, that's for sure. If I hadn't meddled, she'd never have a chance, and what chance did she have anyway? What chance? Look at her eyes as she stares into mine. I can see the future. What how long it's going to be before we discover America? The end.